Ooh, catch your breath. What a night of high school football. We are on the air about 8 minutes later than expected, but that's because tonight was a wild evening. Welcome in everyone to the Gem City Sports Podcast, Week 7 high school football reaction edition. Isaac Petcash, Nick Artman, Jonathan Williams, we were all taking in some football tonight, whether it had been at home, whether it had been on the road, with some incredible big matchups tonight. Of course, our Friday night show on the CW, no longer a thing, but our Friday night podcast continues. We are streaming live right now on YouTube, on Twitch, on X, on Facebook, whether you're a fan of Erie News Now, the flagship City Sports Talk podcast, Nick's X page, our X page on Gem City Sportsnet. Just anywhere you can get your podcast, we're here, we're live, we're local. Happy to have you with us. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe. If you had a game that you were at, give us your reaction, your take to the games tonight and the finals that are just coming in now as we speak. We're going to show them on the bottom of the screen right now. Lot to get into, guys. Not a ton of time to talk about it, but I do want to start with the biggest game of the night, the rivalry between McDowell Cathedral Prep, and you see the final score going across your screen. How about the Trojans? 44-21, they bludgeoned Prep. This game wasn't even as close as the score might indicate. Jonathan, I'll start with you because you were at this game for the majority of it. We all talked about, you guys both picked McDowell to win this game. I don't think any of us expected it to be a 23-point blowout. What did the Trojans do so well tonight?
At the beginning of the game, when you start off, if you're Prep, if you start off the game with a surprise onside kick, it is not the greatest omen if you don't recover it to begin the game. That was just the first thing that I noticed. It kind of showed that you wanted to do something to get a spark and kind of get your guys juice and get your guys going, and it didn't work. It didn't really hurt you right then and there. It only led to 3 points on that first drive, but then after that, you just kind of saw the trenches for McDowell. You saw that offensive and defensive line just go to work, especially in the first half. It was no competition in there. There was no match in the trenches. And then McDowell hands the ball off to 28 and lets him run all over the field. It was almost like you ever started a snowball and rolled it downhill. You start with the field goal, and then from there, it just felt like it was all McDowell, at least that first half. And the score showed it. It was 27-0 midway through the second quarter. And it was almost like you blinked and McDowell had 21 points on the board. Also, for Prep, you had an opportunity. It's 10-0 ball game. You have the ball, and you have a skinny post that is presumably going for 6. You have a skinny post that's presumably going to the house, and it hits your wide receiver in the hands, and he drops it. And it's like it kind of lets all of the air out of that sideline. It lets the air out of that half of the vet. And from there, it just wasn't pretty.
You made a good point there, Jonathan. The big star of the night, Stephon Porter, who had 4 touchdowns in this game. We talked on the last night's podcast about how Blaze Myers had came off of a 4-touchdown performance against Villa Angela St. Joseph. Now it's Porter, one of those 2 senior leaders in the backfield there for McDowell, who has a huge game, and it's now the 5th time in 7 games McDowell's beaten Cathedral Prep. And so the Trojans, who had been on the lesser side of this rivalry for the early part of the 2000s, have flipped this on its head, Nick. And they did it with offense, and they did it in a way that I'll admit I was wrong. I thought if McDowell was going to win this game tonight, they were going to have to do it with defense. They were going to have to do it with long, sustained drives. And they came out of this game today, and Aaron Slocum's team said, all right, I'll raise you 44 points.
Well, and that's where I wish I could agree with you, but this is I didn't expect it to be this much of a difference in the scores, but 44 points doesn't surprise me with this McDowell offense. If my allergies weren't killing me, you'd be getting a very bad version of Baby by Justin Bieber. Sneak peek, that'll be the new drop for Stephon Baby Porter tomorrow morning on Flagship City Sports Talk. But 4 touchdowns, are you kidding me? Yes, of course they're going to be running all over them. They're going to dominate that line play. Yeah, they're going to dominate some line play. And then, it's like I talked about last night. I did expect this. I didn't expect a blowout, but I expect the offense to be humming. You have the McDowell offense who's been playing together for a while. Myers is experienced. Porter is experienced. That offensive line has had some turnover, but they're looking strong again this year. And when you're putting up that consistent of an offense, And then on the flip side, you have Prep kind of still just figuring it out, rotating some guys through. Chill's trying to figure out who some starters are. Latuf looked great tonight, but I'm going to ride with the consistency of McDowell.
I'll tell you what, and again, Jonathan, I know you were the guy at the game, but I just continue to be impressed with what Aaron Slocum has been able to do as we've moved through the season. We talked so much last night in the show about how this Trojan team didn't look anywhere near their best in the first 3 weeks of the season. They start 1-2. I understand they played a couple of Ohio powerhouses, but then they come back, they get Erie at home on a Thursday night. They did not look great. 28-24. They allowed the Royals to stay in the game when they had some chances to close it out in the middle 2 quarters. This, to me, is their signature win. And I think you could argue, okay, it was last week against Villa St. Joseph. But, when we talk to the players the day before the game, traditionally every year for this game, they always say, yeah, it's another game. It's a rivalry, but we got to focus on the task at hand. I call a lie. You can't tell me that these guys are extra juiced up for a game like this. They know how important it is. Probably over 4,000 fans at Veterans Stadium tonight. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind, Aaron Slocum was not the head coach, but he was on the staff 2 years ago when McDowell came in, prim and proper, looking like a dominant football team against Cathedral Prep, who had been reeling in this game 2 years ago and got bludgeoned 41-0. They could not do anything. They got crushed. That was when Penn State head coach James Franklin was actually at the game scouting for Cooper Cousins. They didn't forget that. A lot of the starters on this team were sophomores and freshmen 2 years ago. And what a signature win for Aaron Slocum for a team that's now sitting at 5-2, and a team that now I think you have to argue is a formidable force in Class 6A. And if they can get by Erie, who knows? They're playing their best football right now, guys.
Yeah, no, they're definitely hitting their stride down the stretch. And I mean, you can kind of, I feel like you can attribute it to that early season, like tough schedule and the opponents that you face and just going up against some real powerhouses. And like I said last night on the show, like it allows you to see where your faults are. It allows you to see where your flaws are, and it allows you to correct them really fast when you play against some teams that are going to expose those right away, instead of waiting until you're getting late into the season or you get into the playoffs and now you're playing a team that can expose you where you're weak at. You get exposed early, now you have a chance to correct that stuff and fix that stuff. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I didn't see very many weaknesses for McDowell in this game tonight. They had it rolling offensively. I think you saw some of the youth of Cathedral Prep start to show a little bit, and just a little bit of a lack of continuity as far as having so many new starters and new guys in there and young guys in there, especially defensively. You saw guys get confused on calls. You saw guys get confused on assignments sometimes, one of which I know for a fact led to a score. So you start to see some of that, and it's going to happen when you have a young team out there and you have a young group of guys and a new core of starters playing. But for McDowell, there was none of that. It was like a well-oiled machine tonight, and the scoreboard shows it.
Yeah, I think McDowell. Let me. Here's how I want to put this, Jonathan. Let me ask you, as a former player, do you want to be on the team that starts hot out the gate, 6-0? Winning every game you play? Do you want to ride that and then maybe a mid-season slump on the way to the playoffs? Or do you want to struggle early, get hot, win out the rest of the season, and roll into the playoffs on a hot streak?
You want to go into the playoffs on a hot streak. You want to go into the playoffs feeling like you're playing your best ball at that point in time.
Yeah, I would agree. And there's a lot of doubters in the momentum world. I am not. I very much believe in momentum. And I think that if McDowell can finish the season out. I mean, they got some tough, Ohio teams and finish out with St. Francis at the end. And I think that it's not necessarily an easy schedule out, but if they can keep figuring this out, like you said, there might not be a weakness right now. If they can play that way, and if they could keep that up for the rest of the season and ride that to the 6A playoffs, Erie's always a tough match, but I might put my money in there for McDowell.
Let me put a bow on this by just making a quick note on Cathedral Prep, because I think, obviously not a great showing from them tonight. I do think, and I think Mike Gray would agree on this, I think this is a great learning opportunity for the Ramblers. Our team came in at 5-1. Back-to-back losses. I understand St. Francis is a pretty high powerhouse, but I think these two teams in particular really get an idea of where they need to improve once they're done playing this game. And you look at Cathedral Prep, I think they're going to be fine. Let me just say, first and foremost, I think they're going to be okay. They've got a couple left.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, a couple of games against some big D10 opponents in Farrell and General McLean. But I think when you look at this Cathedral Prep team, the nice thing about this game tonight is the errors are glaring. And so they're going to be able to fix them without having to look at the tape too hard. You have to win on the offensive line and the defensive line, as Jonathan talked about. Winning up front is going to be key. And I also think, too, is that the second level of Prep's defense got exposed, right? Once you lose the line of scrimmage, Stephon Porter essentially just tore through the second level tonight. And I think Cathedral Prep's going to have to go back to the drawing board, figure out, okay, what do we have to do to shore up this front seven? Because, again, I don't think many teams have been burned by McDowell's offense before, but I think for Prep now it's an opportunity for them to go back and say, all right, we know what things are correctable. Here's how we go and do it. And a humbling game for the Ramblers tonight. But, again, big credit to Aaron Slocum and McDowell. They were tremendous in this one, and they win 44-21. And they're sitting at 5-2, and they look great heading to the last three games of the season. All right, that was the first big game of the night tonight. The other big game tonight was in Region 5. And how about the Fairview Tigers? Jonathan, you came for the second half of this one. I was here for 3 quarters and didn't get a single point. But Fairview's defense tonight takes out Fort LaBeouf. They pitch a shutout, and the Tigers, minus Finney Campoli, who was in a wheelchair, grinning and bearing it, helping his teammates out on the sideline tonight, win it 10-0, and they are now 3-0 in region play. And I got to tell you guys, we're going to get a clip from Mark Soboleski in a second. Jonathan, I'll start with you on this because I've got thoughts. I don't know if I've seen a defensive performance in a region game outside of maybe a Prep McDowell with McDowell's defense that was as good as Fairview's tonight. They did not allow Fort LaBeouf to do anything offensively.
Yeah, I mean, from the moment I got there, like Fort LaBeouf was stifled offensively. They had maybe one drive that I can recall where they got inside the opposing 30. And in that drive, ended in an interception, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So Fairview's defense played lights out. They didn't give up very much of anything on the ground. They didn't give up very much of anything through the air. It was just a solid, like an overall top to bottom solid performance from their defense, and one that you needed. Offensively, you aren't full strength. You're missing your guy, So you don't have that firepower that you are used to having and that you typically have over the course of the season. So as a defense, you have to play that well. You have to limit teams to scoring once, twice, or pitching shutouts like they did tonight. And on the flip side of it, I don't want it to be like understated. Fort LaBeouf's defense played really well too, because holding Fairview to 10 points is also a really good performance for that defense. But they're dealing with a little bit of the same thing. The injury bug at quarterback. It's hard to generate offense when your leader is the guy that goes down, and when the guy who touches the ball every play is the guy that goes down. It's tough. And they had some good plays today. They had a good drive or two where they were able to move the ball down the field pretty well. Mm-hmm. But when you get into that 30 yards and in range and it's time to go score, it's a lot harder when you don't have your main guys. And that kind of bit Fort LaBeouf tonight.
Two interesting points for the Fairview offense tonight. They went with 2 different quarterbacks. They started Carlos Cimino, who I think outside of the 2 interceptions, he's got a lot of talent around him. He's a junior. He'll be the starter next season. I think Fairview has their quarterback for next year. They ran Joey O'Reilly, who did great things on defense. He had the game-ending turnover with a few minutes left to go. I think the play that encapsulates this game the best, and Nick, I know that you were watching from afar, but you've seen Fairview's defense and Mark Soboleski and his ability to overcome challenges. Fairview had a 4th down and 8 at the Fort LaBeouf 40-yard line with 3 minutes to go. Up by 10, but if you don't get it, you give LaBeouf the ball back in good field position. Maybe you punt the ball away. Maybe, I don't know, you try a long field goal. Danny Lindenberger had a 50-yarder that he attempted earlier in the game. Mark Soboleski calls timeout. He gets the guys over to the sideline. He puts the offense right back out there, and he runs quarterback power, knowing full well he's not going to pick up the first down. That is how much he trusted this defense. And, to Jonathan's point, Fort LaBeouf, of course, missing their starting quarterback. Xavier Blows was under center tonight. They just couldn't throw the football. And when Fairview realized, I think, that they could force Fort LaBeouf to become one-dimensional, even though the Bison's strength is running the football, it was lights out. The front seven today was tremendous. They had a couple of huge plays, especially late in that game, 2 big turnovers forced in the second half. Nick, I think for this Tiger team, and Mark Sobel, we're going to get to it in a second, kind of took a jab at maybe some of us and maybe, some in the media, that the defense for Fairview hasn't been getting enough credit this season. Maybe now they should be regarded as a top 1 or 2 defense in all of high school football in D10.
Oh, just let me hit that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right on that one. And it's like I talked about on last night's show. This was going to be a defensive slugfest. And when you look at Fort LaBeouf, they're only putting up, just under 20 points a game on offense. So you had to come in and you had to put every bit of those 20 points trying to get any field goal of that 20 points a game that you could possibly get in this game, because Fairview was holding people to like under 15 points a game or something like that. Like Fairview's defense was incredible. And we talked about this, when you have 2 potentially backup quarterbacks, your offense is not going to run the same way as your starter. There's going to be some hiccups, and you saw that with Semino's 2 picks. So I think that the better defense wins out on this. So when you're saying that they're a top 1 or 2 defense in D10, I don't think that's an overreaction at all. And I think they showed it that they absolutely can be in that conversation tonight against Fort LaBeouf.
Just an amazing effort from the Fairview defense, and a passionate Mark Sobolewski post-game. One of his first games when he was head coach for the Fairview Tigers, they were blasted by Fort LaBeouf 55-0. He's come really full circle since. I caught up with him after the game, and about as emotional as you will see. Mark Sobolewski, here's his thoughts.
It's been a 5-year journey to get us to be able to be like them. They beat us 55-0 the first time we played them, and they beat us twice that year during COVID. And I respect that staff and their coaches. They're so well coached, and we wanted to be like them. We wanted to be like Fort LaBeouf because of how hard they played, and it took us 5 years to be able to match that.
When you talk about toughness, I assume the defense, how impressed were you with their performance today in pitching the shutout?
Well, they've been pretty doggone good all year and haven't gotten much respect for it. They pitched a shutout against Slippery Rock. They only gave up 6 to Grove City. So they played great last week against Seneca, against an amazing Seneca offensive attack. But they came up tonight. They were buckled up, ready to play, and I'm so proud of them.
You said in the huddle that you're happy that these guys believe in themselves, that they're the great team that they are. What's it taken to get to this point that they have that belief now?
Well, it's taken belief. I mean, they didn't believe in themselves early on when I got here, and through the weight room and through practicing hard and great spring and summer sessions, and these kids have bought in and done everything we asked them. I just don't realize. I don't think they realize how good they could be this year, and it's going to take a win like this to prove it to them.
Guys, in a way, I almost wonder if, in the back of Mark Sobolewski's mind, though he wasn't happy, I'm sure, and no one's happy that Vinny Campoli's out for the year, but maybe in his mind he thought, this is the injury that we need to show our team that we're as good as I think we are. You lose your starting quarterback, you could make the argument that for any team, that's just curtains, right? It's lights out. Oh, since then, their defense has allowed 9 points in 2 games. And I really think that there's part of Mark Sobolewski that is sitting there being like, as awful as it is to see Vinny go down, this is the type of team that I want. Gritty, tough, tenacious. You heard him post-game just a minute ago. We wanted to be like Fort LaBeouf. That takes tenacity. That takes grit. And Fairview is the first team this season to do to Fort LaBeouf what Fort LaBeouf has done to so many other teams this year, and that's close them out. And almost like what we would call a boa constrictor. They were suffocating. They did not allow any sort of momentum, any sort of pressure. And keep in mind, this game was at Carmen Benito Stadium. I mean, this is no home atmosphere for the Tigers, and they get it done. And now, guys, they're 3-0 in region play. And I think a part of Mark Sobolewski's plea there with the respect quote wasn't necessarily to the media. I wonder if it was to the D10 committee, because now you have to consider Fairview as a potential top 4 seed in Class 3A for the playoffs. Am I wrong on that?
No, I don't think you're wrong on that at all. And that's, as I'm watching that interview, that clip, I'm thinking they're bought in. He's bought in. He's finally to the point where he's getting hit, like you said, he's getting his team to play the way he wants to play. And they're going to just come in, and it doesn't matter who's at quarterback for Fairview. they're going to beat the snot out of you on defense. And if it's that old school Western Pennsylvania defense wins championships mentality. And I think you're right. I think that could be, I was going to say shots called, but that was a little extreme. But the idea of just like, hey, put us on the map, put us in the conversation with those other teams because we're here and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, anytime, especially in the last 2 games, you can give up 9 points as a defense in 2 games in high school football, like you're doing something right.
Yeah, right. Seriously, are you kidding? You're kidding me? Like, absolutely, that's incredible.
And it takes an entire group of guys that really are bought into the game plan, bought into the scheme, bought into their coaching staff, and bought into playing for the guys beside them. And if you don't think those guys in red and white are playing for their injured quarterback, you're crazy. Like, they kind of want to show everybody too, like, okay, yeah, Vinny went down, but we're not dead because of that. He went down, and that was a big loss for us, and we hate to see him go down. But we're not going to just stop playing football because we lost him. And I think that's kind of what they're showing on the field is like, okay, they might not be the most dominating wins. They might not put up 40 and 50 points, but they're going to grind out wins, and they're going to keep playing football for the duration of the season. And when you have a team an entire team that's bought into doing that, good things can happen.
Absolutely.
Man, I'll tell you what, you get goosebumps hearing from Mark Sobolewski, who has been through this a time or two in his coaching days at McDowell and now at Fairview. And one thing he knows is he knows how to win and he knows how to build a program, and he's done that at Fairview. And now, as we talked about the Tigers, a legitimate argument for a top 4 seed. And let's put this out there, guys, because how large now does their matchup next week against Corey loom? 2 teams that are 5-2, Beavers 2-1 of the region. They shut out Northeast tonight, 48-0. That game's going to be at Jack Bestwick Stadium in what's going to be a raucous environment for the Fairview Tigers. If Fairview wins this game next week, given the fact that, and the scores are rolling across your screen, Titusville was blown out today by Hickory, who looks like a top 1 or 2 seed in 3A. Titusville takes a step back. You look at Fort LaBeouf, of course, who has that loss now to Fairview. Fairview, Corey, if we're being realistic, if you look at, okay, Fairview, Corey, Titusville, now probably as the 3 teams, maybe Fort LaBeouf in there as the 4 teams that are vying for the 3 and 4 spot in Class 3A. Fairview wins this game against Corey. They're gonna have a home field advantage-esque playoff game, I think. I don't think there's any doubt the Tigers, even without their starting quarterback, at 6-2, they'd be 4-0 in the region. They'd have at least a guaranteed split of region number 5. This is for Fairview, this is the season. You win this game and you are on an ascending path to at least a good look at the district semifinals.
The only thing I worry about is that Corey matchup. Corey's got a tough defense. They're playing lights out offense. They've only slipped up a couple times against Fort LaBeouf. They lost 19-13, and then they lose to ZZ Top and the General McLean Lancers. And I worry about Fairview. I'm not worried about the defense. I think that they can, they won't blank Corey like they did tonight, but I just don't know if their offense can match the offense of Corey. So I think if Corey gets that slight edge, if they get up by 10 points, I worry about Fairview's offense about being able to come through. But man, if that Fairview Tiger defense can stop Corey, I think I agree. That's a huge statement game coming up.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big game, but I kind of have the same worry as you, Nick. How long can you continue to ride on the back of your defense? And if you're a defensive player on this Fairview team, you kind of take it as a challenge of like, okay, let's lead the charge now. Like, it's on us. This team is going to go as we go. So we know coming into these games, okay, we can't get down. We can't get down early. We can't get down big. We have to play from in front. We have to get stops, and we have to limit teams from scoring. So if you're a player on that defense, take it as a challenge and use it as such and use it as motivation to keep playing that well. But from the outside looking in, it's like that's going to be the question: is how far can you ride this defense, and how deep into the playoffs potentially can you ride this defense, knowing that your offense isn't at full strength, and that's going to be a big determining factor for how they fare down the stretch.
When you take a look at some of the other scores tonight that impact region number 5, we'll get to the standings in a second. Corey upending Northeast 48-0. Of course, the Fairview over Fort LaBeouf. Harbor Creek, don't count them out yet. not at all. They're 2-1 in region play. They moved to 4-3 in the season. They beat Girard 31-12. They still have a game against Fort LaBeouf. They still have a game against Corey left, so they're not out of the woods. Are the teams ahead of them yet in terms of thinking about Harbor Creek? And then, of course, in 3A, where things are concerned, Hickory beats Titusville 56-21 and Sharon blanks Grove City 35-0. So in Region 5, you have Fairview at the top at 3-0, then a hodgepodge of 3 2-1 teams in Corey, Harbor Creek, and Fort LaBeouf. Many of the teams we just noted still have to play each other. Fairview, of course, in the best position because after Corey, their last 2 games, Northeast and Titusville, and so they essentially are clear for a potential tie or an outright Region 5 victory. Other scores tonight that we want to get to, ones that we may not be talking about as much. ZZ Top and General McLean winning again. They're now 6-1. They beat Warren 48-6. Didn't play many of their starters going into the third quarter. The team that they'll likely face for the 4A championship, Meadville, beat Franklin 62-6. Other scores for you. How about Iroquois? I want to talk a bit about Region 3, guys, before we go. Iroquois comes back to beat Northwestern 20-12. Big win for Seneca, who upends Eisenhower 27-14, and the Bobcats are still in it. You couple that in with the Mercyhurst Prep win over Union City last night, and maybe we'll end with this, guys. Region 3 is interesting now too. Mercyhurst Prep 3-0 in the region. Seneca 2-1. Iroquois 2-1. Seneca and Iroquois play later in the season. Couple of big wins for the Bobcats and the Braves, who are trying to catch the Lakers in Region 3.
Yeah, for Seneca, you had the really fast start, and everybody was really high on you, and then you kind of hit a little bit of a bump in the road, and you drop 1 or 2. It's really interesting to me to see like how they handle that kind of like mid-season slump, as you were kind of alluding to earlier, Nick. Which one would you rather, like start really fast and then slump and then try to build back up, or start slow and then just kind of build throughout the course of the season? Well, we're going to see how the build back up works for Seneca, because they started really fast. Everybody was high on them. Everybody loved Seneca. 3-0 for the first time in I don't know how long and how many years. And then all of a sudden you lose a game or 2, and now everybody's eyeing you a little bit like, okay, was this Seneca team for real? Was the first 3 games a fluke? It's going to be really interesting, and I have that Iroquois game circled because that's kind of going to be your statement game. That's going to be your chance to kind of show, okay, we're one of the top 2 teams in this region. It's us, Mercyhurst Prep, ... everybody else, and that's going to be the game that you have to show that in.
Well, and in that same lens, Mercyhurst Prep was exactly what I was thinking too. They kind of started out slow, and now they're picking it up. Feliciano had another 4 touchdowns last night.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
He's making offers. They can't refuse it. The kid is going insane. That team is heating up. The offense is just looking really strong. 47 points against Union City. They lost last week to Corey in a close 28-21. But I think it's the same idea. They had a lot of turnover on that offense. They lost some studs on that offense. And then now they took those first couple games to try and figure it out. Now they're moving forward. They're figuring it out, and they're starting to put up points, and they're putting up points in bunches. That's scary coming into the latter half of the season.
And again, keep in mind, we talk about playoffs as well. Mercyhurst Prep, Seneca, Iroquois all battling for 2A contention. 2A traditionally the last few years has had 6 playoff teams. And I think we're going to see somewhat similarly here because they're, in terms of the number of teams in Class 2A, it's not able to find 8 teams. But for seeding purposes, I think, Iroquois, Seneca, they look strong, as does Mercyhurst Prep. So 2A is going to be interesting too, because Farrell's not having the greatest of years, although they are 3-0 in their region and are coming on strong as well. So Region 3 is going to be interesting. And in the 2 regions that we really focus on with Region 3 and Region 5, Region 6 and 7, of course, are big as well. We're gonna have these region titles that come down to the wire. And I know they don't matter a lot for playoff seeding, but they do matter when it comes to your record and making sure you make a statement for the District 10 committee. Speaking of statements, guys, let's end with this. Our final statements and verdicts for our performing team or player of the night. I'm going to start with you on this, Jonathan, and I'll let you take the obvious one since you were at the game. Your performance of the night goes to who and or what team?
It's got to go to Porter from McDowell for sure. Just a dominant first half performance and a dominant full game performance. 4 touchdowns is a great day. It doesn't matter what position you play or what team you play for. That's a great day. And he just imposed his will this entire game. Hats off to his guys up front for blocking for him. But yeah, he definitely caught my eye tonight.
Yeah, I'm going to go a different direction. A game we didn't really talk about a whole lot because, they were putting in backups in the third quarter, like you said, Isaac. But that ZZ Top connection.
Are you sure you're not getting residuals every time you play that?
Oh, hang on. I couldn't. Hang on. I can't.
I'm pretty sure you are getting paid for that.
I just want to make sure. All right, no, but seriously, I'm going the opposite way. I'm going Jacob Zeitz, 8 catches, 209 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He didn't play the whole game. He looked incredible tonight in a homecoming game. I heard the fireworks from my house after I got home. Just another great night from GM.
I will say, and props to Jacob. I mean, the guy's putting up video game numbers. Homecoming night at General McLean is a special place in my heart. It's where I proposed to my now wife. And so anytime they are able to play well in homecoming, big kudos. Jacob lighting it up on the field. GM 6-1. They're not going to be losing anytime soon. Their game against Prep's going to be big. They've got Meadville. You want to talk about big games? How about General McLean versus Meadville this Thursday? Now, the big question to me will be, will any of these teams show their hands? Although I think we've seen enough tape to know that Meadville likes to ground and pound and General McLean's going to go with the spread. So that's a Thursday game for your liking. Stay tuned, by the way. More on that with our podcast coming up a little bit later. We've got some things in the works. Nick and Jonathan don't even know this about this yet. But we've got some things that could be in the works. We're going to let you know about it that could be related to the GM Meadville game on Thursday. All right, my performance of the night. Thank you for leaving me the Fairview Tigers. What a defensive gem for them. They pitch a shutout, 10-0. Offense didn't really have to be tremendous because the defense was good enough. And, I note your guys' point with the Corey game. I think Nick Lesher in the backfield could give the Tigers some problems. But, man, this front seven, and I really mean this front seven for Fairview has gotten into a stratosphere that I don't even think Mark Sobolewski necessarily anticipated that they would be in. Secondary looked great again tonight. They did not allow at many completions at all, and the only completions were short screen passes, forcing a couple of turnovers. The defense was great. And now the Tigers, the team that we thought were going to potentially go away into the good night without Vinny Campoli, now lead Region 5, are in control of Region 5. And if we're making an argument for the number 3 seed in Class 3A with respect to Sharon Hickory, Fairview now is probably that team that is there as the top seed, not from a Mercer County squad in Erie County. So I give big props to the Tigers as my performance of the night, and Mark Sobolewski gets his signature win this season and maybe in his tenure with the Fairview Tigers. That's all for tonight. I wish we could talk more, but we got to get ready for 11 o'clock newscast because we got Football Friday highlights coming up at 11:15 on Erie News Now. Gents, next show, Monday, we're going to be doing Flagship City Sports Talk. We are talking everything from NFL week number 5 to more high school football and our performances. It's going to be an exciting weekend too. We didn't get to college football or the NFL, but every single week they talk about stacking wins. We're stacking good show after good show after good week of high school football. And it's been a lot of fun. And hopefully we do it again next week.
Yes, sir.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll have more clips and sound bites from our show tonight on our social medias. Like us, give us a follow, subscribe, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and X as well. Enjoy your Friday night. Get some sleep after the adrenaline rush of high school football. Congrats to McDowell, Fairview, and all the teams that won tonight. We're back on Monday on the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. Until then, have a good weekend.